Now, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has said policing in the UK is conducted without fear or favour, adding that those engaged in the violence seen over the weekend will feel the full force of the law. Now, let's get the thoughts of the head of public policy at Christian Concern, Tim Dieppe. Now, Tim, there's already talk of bringing in this Islamophobia definition as a response to these riots, and many people will be concerned that will have negative impact on freedom of expression. What do you think about those concerns?
Yeah, well, I've been concerned about this for quite some time, Emma. The APPG definition, which is the definition that people are talking about, proposed by the All-Party Parliamentary Group on British Muslims, reads that Islamophobia is rooted in racism and is a type of racism that targets expressions of Muslimness or perceived Muslimness. And straight away, you can see many problems with that. First of all, Islam is not a race, so calling it racism isn't right. And secondly, it's talking about this vague term Muslimness, whatever that means. It could encompass all sorts of things, beliefs or practices. And then it goes on to say perceived Muslimness. So really, it's anything that somebody perceives to be Islamophobic, which could well include criticism of Islamic beliefs or practices, which anybody who's not a Muslim should be free to say, I disagree with Islamic practices or disagree with Islamic beliefs, or, for example, that Muhammad is not a prophet, or Muhammad did immoral things like fight in wars and battles and kill lots of non-Muslims and so on. So I'm very concerned that making this definition law would effectively be an Islamic blasphemy code. I wrote a report earlier this year for the Free Speech Union called Islamophobia, Banning Islamophobia, Blasphemy by the Back Door. Richard Dawkins wrote the foreword to it. So it's widely agreed that this is a problematic definition. But another problem is it's been very widely adopted, and it's not least by political parties themselves. In fact, the Labour Party has formally adopted this definition of Islamophobia as part of its code of conduct. So any Labour MP, any member of the Labour Party who says something that is criticising perceived Muslimness risks being suspended from the party or disciplined for that. And so you already have an effective sort of blasphemy code or, restriction on what people can say about Islam in the Labour Party amongst the majority of MPs in Parliament. And that's already very concerning to me.
You can see why this is coming up again, though, considering that in recent days, mosques have been the target of violent protests and intimidation. Worshippers in those mosques feeling intimidated with, mobs of thugs outside. I mean, what do you do to protect people exercising their faith in a free country without adopting such a prescriptive definition? Well, listen,
the themes that we have seen across the country over the last weekend have been absolutely horrific and appalling and heartbreaking. And it's criminal activity, whether it's violence or vandalism of any kind, it's already against the law. So what we need to do is enforce the law as it stands against every person, no matter what their creed or race or age or whatever it might be. Everybody should face the full consequence of the law for this horrific scenes that people have seen all over the country. And I hope they do, and I hope they face those proper consequences. What I'm concerned about is we shouldn't therefore come in and as a sort of knee-jerk reaction, introduce something that would actually criminalise free speech or criminalise legitimate speech about Islam as a religion. You've got to be free to criticise religions and ideologies. What is a good term is to say anti-Muslim. And that is what some of these protests are, very clearly anti-Muslim. And that makes clear it's about the people rather than the ideology itself. You've got to be able to criticise the ideology while saying anti-Muslim prejudice is wrong. And I'm very happy to say that, and let's say that. But I really don't think we need laws. What we do need is the laws that we have existing, fully enforced across the board. Anybody who breaks the law, wherever they do it, whenever they do it, however they do it, whoever they are that does it, should always face the full consequences of the law. And that I totally hope we will see as a consequence of these various riots and criminality that we've seen on the screens.
And Tim, that definition of Islamophobia that you mentioned, that also uses as examples criticisms of the Islamic religion as being instrumental to attack Muslims. So when you see Keir Starmer, who is being pressured to adopt this as a legal definition to make Islamophobia illegal, when you see him talking about cracking down on things that people say online, do you think that this could have a serious more than a chilling impact on free speech, not just with respect to criticism of Islam, but also for those who might be critical of Islamism?
Yes, absolutely. And I really hope this does not happen. I certainly don't want to support incitement to violence. And threats and incitement to violence should be and are already a criminal offence and should be properly dealt with. And I agree with that. But then it's where do they broaden it out to that? And that's what I'm concerned about, broadening it out to criticism of Islam as a religion. You're quite right. The report that goes with the definition actually included examples of even historical things like saying Islam spread by the sword, or even saying things about Muhammad in some cases would be considered Islamophobic. And that's wrong. I think it's anti-Muslim that we need to use, not Islamophobia in general as a term. And I'm very concerned about how this could work out in terms of a threat to free speech with a majority parliament of Labour MPs who've all agreed to abide by that code of conduct that adopts this definition. How will they stand up and say we don't agree with this definition? I think it's a very concerning thing. We could easily see an Islamic blasphemy law in this country, and we just need more and more people to realise the threat that this is and to write to their MPs and tell them this is really must not happen across this country as a result of these awful riots and violence that we've seen.
OK, well, thank you very much. Tim Dieppe, you're from Christian Concern. Really great to get your analysis on this one.